I've talked about my granny before, my father's mother, the person to whom I was closest growing up, the reason I spent all that time at the Baptist church, the person who served as my primary caregiver until I was 18 years old, the person with whom I shared a birthday. She was the embodiment of selfless service. She taught me what it feels like to be loved unconditionally. And she held utterly racist views of Black Americans. Her best friend and next-door neighbor was a Japanese immigrant, a survivor of World War II. As a child, I spent hours at Tommy's house, gazing longingly at her beautiful doll collection, carefully encased in glass. I cooked with her, watched Japanese movies and soap operas with her. I played nickel card games with her and her family long into the summer nights. I chatted and told jokes with Tommy as she picked fleas off her schnauzers' bellies. I worked in her garden and did craft projects in her kitchen. And the reason I spent so much time with Tommy is because Granny trusted her completely and loved her and encouraged me to love and trust her too. My hometown of Salinas was pretty diverse in the 80s and 90s. Immigration from Mexico peaked in the 1980s, and the town is now approximately 40% Latinx. Growing up, I had a large contingent of Asian American friends whose family lineages traced back to China, Japan, the Philippines, and Pakistan. Aside from Tommy and a Chinese American couple at our church, though, I don't recall Granny's circle of friends being very diverse. What I do remember are the horrible things she said about Blacks and Latinos. Granny told me if I ever dated a Black man, she'd disown me. My dad, too, who was generally an immensely caring person, would tell racist jokes, mostly about Mexicans. When I was in my early teens, I mustered up the courage to tell him I found the jokes offensive, and he toned it down, but I don't think he ever really understood why I believed it to be so wrong. During the last several months, I have struggled to know what direction to take to remain involved in the resistance to the current administration. My life is busy. I have important relationships to maintain that require my energy and attention, and I am trying to pay attention to my own needs for the first time in my life, which doesn't leave a lot of time or energy for social justice work. This has made me feel depressed and full of self-blame. But I've noticed that I've read something that reflects the lived experience of people of color nearly every day for several months. I am trying to educate myself. I am learning that I have a responsibility to speak up about racism and white supremacy. My granny for a long time was the closest thing I had to a higher power. To air her racist views publicly feels like a betrayal. But, dear friends, this is what we must do. We must speak of the legacies we've inherited. We must find friends who will hold us accountable in word and deed. We must talk about race and equity and justice. If we remain silent, we remain complicit. As we worship together this morning, let us breathe into the truth of resistance and liberation.